You're standing over the ball, your hands wrapped around the club the way some glossy magazine told you, and still it slices away into the trees. Sound familiar? I lived that for 30 years. Then a quiet old man in a small town in Japan handed me something that cost about $10 and fixed my grip in a single afternoon. I didn't believe him. I was wrong. What he showed me came from a book written in 1645 by a swordsman named Miyamoto Musashi in a cave in the hills of what is now Kumamoto. And the strangest part? You don't need to fly to Japan or rebuild your swing. You can do this in your own garage, this week, with almost nothing. I want to be honest with you before we go one step further. I spent most of my life buying my way out of my problems. Bad grip? Buy a new grip. Still slicing? Buy a new driver. Book another lesson. I threw money at that game for decades, the way a lot of us were taught to do. And I want to tell you exactly how a $10 piece of molded rubber and a 400-year-old idea behind it undid all of that. Because once you understand why your hands fail you, you can never unsee it. Let me take you back to how this started for me. I was in my late 50s. My knees were going, my scores were climbing the wrong way, and I had a golfing trip that took me through a stretch of rural Japan I never expected to remember. I wasn't there for golf. I was there visiting the family of an old friend, in a town near the mountains, where the mornings smelled like cut cedar, and the older men still did things with their hands that most of us forgot how to do generations ago. One of those men was a retired kendo instructor. Kendo, if you've never seen it, is the Japanese art of the sword, practiced now with bamboo staves, but rooted in real combat that goes back many hundreds of years. I mentioned my golf slice one evening, half joking, complaining the way we all do. He didn't laugh. He asked to see my hands. Not my swing, my hands. He took a wooden practice sword down from the wall, placed it in my grip, and within about 10 seconds he shook his head and said something my friend translated as, "You are strangling it." I had no idea what he meant. But I was about to learn that everything I believed about holding a club was backwards, and that the fix had been written down 4 centuries before I was born. Here is the first thing that cracked my whole understanding open. Almost every one of us grips too hard, and we grip in the wrong place. We were taught, somewhere along the way, to seize the club, to feel powerful, to squeeze with the palms and the thumbs and the strong index fingers, because that feels like control. It feels like you're going to hit it a mile. But that instinct is exactly what ruins the shot. A tight grip in the palms locks your wrists. Locked wrists can't release. And when the wrists can't release, the club face stays open and the ball sails right into the trees, every single time. The old instructor knew this without ever touching a golf club, because the exact same truth governs the sword. If you strangle a katana, you cannot cut cleanly. The blade wobbles. The edge turns. In a real fight, that got a man killed. So over centuries, the Japanese sword masters worked out the precise way the human hand should hold a long-shafted weapon for both control and speed. They gave it a name. They called it tenuchi, which means, roughly, the inside of the hand. And tenuchi is the missing piece that no golf magazine ever explained to me properly. Now here is where it gets specific, and here is where I stopped being a skeptic. Tenuchi teaches that the power and control in the grip live in the last 3 fingers of your lead hand. The pinky, the ring finger, and the middle finger. Those 3. The thumb and the index finger stay soft, almost relaxed, barely doing any work at all. That sounds like nothing. It sounds too small to matter. But when the old man wrapped my hands correctly on that wooden sword, and I felt the weight settle into those bottom 3 fingers, while my thumb went quiet, the whole tool suddenly felt alive in my hands. Light, fast, mine. I had held a golf club for 30 years and never once felt that. Let me tell you where this idea was actually written down, because this is not folklore, and it is not something I'm dressing up to sound old and wise. In 1645, a swordsman named Miyamoto Musashi, near the end of his life, sat in a cave called Reigando in the Higo region of southern Japan, and wrote a treatise now known in English as The Book of Five Rings. In the section he titled The Water Scroll, Musashi writes about the grip directly. He says the thumb and the forefinger should be held lightly. The middle finger should be neither tight nor loose, and the last two fingers should be gripped firmly. He even warns against what he calls a dead hand, a grip that is fixed and rigid, and he praises the living hand, one that stays supple and ready. Read that again and think about your golf grip. The thumb and the forefinger light, the last fingers firm. That is, almost word for word, what the finest golf teachers have quietly tried to get across for 100 years, and most of us never absorbed it, because it was buried under equipment sales and swing theories and 1,000 things designed to make the game complicated. A man wrote the answer in a cave in 1645, and I paid for lesson after lesson without ever hearing it plainly. So here is where the $10 training aid comes in, and I promise you it is almost embarrassingly simple. What that old instructor sent me home with was not a gadget with batteries or an app. It was a molded grip trainer, a lightweight rubber sleeve shaped exactly like a golf grip, but with contoured channels and ridges where each finger is supposed to sit. You slide it onto a club, or it comes already fixed onto a short training shaft, and it physically will not let your hands go into the wrong position. The soft thumb rests where the mold tells it to rest. The last three fingers wrap into the deeper grooves, so they naturally take the load. You literally cannot strangle it. The tool teaches your hands the tenuchi position by making the wrong grip feel impossible. The version I use to this day cost me about $10. And I had spent, over the years, hundreds and hundreds on clubs and gloves and lessons, chasing the exact thing this little rubber sleeve fixed in an afternoon. The first time I set my hands into those grooves and made a slow half swing in the backyard, I felt my wrists unlock for the first time in my adult life. The clubhead whipped through where before it had dragged, and I stood there, a grown man in his 50s, actually a little angry, because I realized how long I'd been kept in the dark about something this cheap and this simple. And that is the part I need you to sit with for a moment, because now the story turns, and it turns toward a harder truth. Why did nobody just tell me this? Why did I have to hear it from a retired swordsman in a mountain town instead of from the industry I handed my money to for 3 decades? I want to be careful and fair here, but once you start pulling that thread, you find something uncomfortable underneath the whole modern game. Think about how golf is sold to us. The problem is never presented as your hands. The problem is always presented as your equipment. Your driver is a year old, so it must be slow. Your shaft flex is wrong. Your grips are worn. You need the new model, the new face technology, the new lightweight alloy. Every season there is a new reason your money is the solution. And here is the thing about a grip fix that costs $10 and takes an afternoon. It cures the disease, and a cure does not sell nearly as well as a treatment you have to keep buying. A man who fixes his grip once and keeps it forever is not a returning customer. He is a solved problem, and a solved problem is worth very little to the people selling you the next thing. I am not telling you every club is a scam or every teacher is out to fleece you. Many of them are good, honest people. But the whole machine is built around a quiet assumption, and the assumption is that the answer lies in what you buy next, never in what your own 2 hands already know how to do. The Japanese kept the older knowledge alive precisely because their tradition was never about buying a better sword every spring. It was about mastering the one you had. The hand was the technology. And when the hand is the technology, the same thinking that frees your fingers also frees your feet, your hips, your tempo, your whole pattern. That is the part I could never fit into one video, so I sat down and wrote it out properly, the way that old instructor taught it to me, hand over hand. In these books I take you far past the grip, the pause that calms a panicked swing, the quiet club face that kills a slice without rebuilding anything, why you top the fairway wood and what stops it tonight in your socks, on the living room carpet, the miss-by-miss fixes, the 30-day blueprint, the printable cards you carry to the course. and what to do when your 50-year-old back says no. It is written for men our age who still want to walk to the first tee without flinching, and every drill is testable at home before you ever touch a range ball. If that is you, scan the QR code right there on your screen, link in the description, pinned comment, the books are waiting. Now, back to the reason I keep saying this cost me almost nothing. And when the hand is the technology, nobody can sell you a replacement. That difference changed how I see almost everything now, not just golf. But let me stay on the practical, because I made you a promise, and I keep my promises. I know exactly what some of you are thinking right now. You're thinking, that's a nice story about a man in Japan, but I'm not flying anywhere, and I'm not spending my Saturday hunting down some special rubber grip. So let me hand you something you can do this very week, in your own home, with things you almost certainly already own. This part is built for the real life you actually live, the busy one, the one with a to-do list. Here is the first exercise, and it costs you nothing. Take any golf club you own. Set your lead hand on it the way you normally would. Now, before you do anything else, I want you to completely relax your thumb and your index finger. Let them just rest on the grip, doing no work at all. Then gently firm up only your bottom 3 fingers, the pinky, the ring, and the middle. Just those. Squeeze them to about half of what feels natural. That's it. Now make a slow, smooth swing at nothing, just air, and feel what your wrists do. 9 times out of 10, people feel the club head speed up and swing more freely on the very first try. You just did Tanuchi. You just did what Musashi wrote in that cave. Here is the second one, and this is the household trick I love the most. You don't even need a club. Grab a broomstick, a rake handle, a length of wooden dowel, anything long and light. Now wrap a simple rubber band or 2 around it right where your lead hand goes, and set your fingers so the band sits under those last 3 fingers, giving them something to grip against while your thumb and forefinger stay soft. Swing it slowly. That homemade setup teaches your hand the same lesson the $10 trainer does, for the price of a rubber band you already have in a kitchen drawer. I had my brother-in-law, a lifelong slicer, try exactly this on his back porch, and he called me 2 days later half shouting, because for the first time in years he'd hit a straight ball off the first tee. And here is a third small thing you can start today, indoors, watching your own television. Every time you have a spare minute, hold a club or that broomstick and simply practice setting the correct grip, then letting go, then setting it again. Over and over. Soft thumb, firm bottom fingers. The masters called this building the living hand. The supple, ready grip, Musashi praised. Your hands learn through repetition, not through reading. 10 repetitions a day for 2 weeks, and your fingers will find that position on their own, without you thinking about it, even under pressure on the course. That is how the old teachers trained. Not with lectures, with the hand doing the thing, quietly, again and again, until it became who you are. Now, I told you at the start that the deepest secret came straight out of the Book of 5 Rings, and I have been holding the best of it back on purpose, because this is the piece that took me the longest to understand, and it is the piece that finally made everything click. This is the part I want you to carry with you long after this video ends. When I went back to that old instructor after a few weeks, proud of my new grip, he watched me swing and shook his head again. Better, he said, but still dead. I didn't understand. I had the fingers right. What more was there? And then he taught me the thing that Musashi actually meant, the part almost everyone misses even when they read the book. The grip is not a fixed position you clamp down and hold. It is a living thing that changes through the motion. Musashi warned against the dead hand precisely because a grip that stays exactly the same tension from start to finish kills the strike. In the sword arts, the hand stays soft on the way up and through most of the swing, and then, at the very moment of the cut, the last 3 fingers give a small, sharp squeeze. A gentle wringing motion like wringing out a wet towel, timed to the instant of impact. The Japanese have a word close to this idea, this final tightening at the moment of the cut. The hands stay relaxed and fast throughout, and then they focus all at once, right at contact, and instantly soften again. That is the living hand. That is Tenuchi at its highest level. And when the old man put his hands over mine and walked me through it, soft, 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 then a tiny squeeze of the bottom fingers right at the bottom of the swing, my ball flight changed completely. The slice was gone, not reduced, gone. Because that little ringing squeeze at impact squares the club face at exactly the right instant, the same way it squares a blade for a clean cut. Let me tell you why this is such a well-kept secret, and why it was almost lost. The full teaching of Tenuchi was never written down in plain public instruction for the common person. It passed from master to student, hand over hand, inside sword schools that guarded their methods for generations. Musashi hinted at it in 1645, but he wrote for warriors who already had a teacher standing beside them to fill in what the words left out. When those old sword schools faded and Japan modernized, that knowledge could easily have vanished entirely. It survived because a handful of instructors, in quiet towns like the one I visited, kept teaching it the old way, hand over hand, refusing to let it die. And now it has reached you, through me, sitting here telling you what an old man in the mountains was generous enough to place into my own hands. So here is exactly what you do this weekend, and I want you to try it before you ever spend another dollar on this game. Set your grip with the soft thumb and forefinger, and the firm bottom 3 fingers. Start your swing with your whole grip relaxed, light, almost lazy, because relaxed is fast and tight is slow. Keep it light all the way down. And then, only at the very bottom, right as the club reaches the ball, give a small quick squeeze with the last 3 fingers of your lead hand and let it release again. Soft, soft, squeeze at impact. That is 400 years of sword mastery poured into one golf swing. Do it slowly at first, at half speed, 10 or 15 times, until the timing feels natural. Then let it build. I have watched people who slice their whole lives hit a soft, straight draw within a single bucket of balls, doing exactly this. And the $10 training aid, that molded rubber grip, it matters here more than ever, because it teaches your hand where to squeeze from without you having to think about it. When your fingers already sit in the right grooves, that little ringing motion at impact happens almost on its own. The tool and the technique are 2 halves of the same answer. One costs about $10, the other is free and 400 years old. Together they undo the thing that has cost so many of us so much money and so many ruined rounds and so many years of quiet frustration. I want to step back now and tell you what this really did for me, because it was never truly about golf. It was about realizing how much I had been trained to reach for my wallet instead of reaching for my own hands. For 30 years I believed the answer was always the next purchase. A retired man who had never played a round of golf in his life fixed in one afternoon what all that spending never could. And he did it with knowledge, not with money. That is the thing I keep coming back to. The knowledge was always there. It was written down in 1645. It survived wars and centuries and the death of the sword itself. It just never made anyone rich, so nobody bothered to hand it to me until I stumbled into a mountain town and a kind old man took pity on my terrible grip. There is something quietly powerful about learning that the fix was never expensive and never complicated. It was hidden in plain sight, in the difference between a dead hand and a living one, in 3 fingers instead of 10, in a squeeze the size of a heartbeat at exactly the right moment. And once you feel it, you own it forever. Nobody can sell it back to you. Nobody can make it go out of date next season. That is what real knowledge feels like, and I think, deep down, that is why you clicked on this video in the first place. Some part of you already suspected that the answer was simpler than they were letting on. So let me leave you with this. What was quietly taken from you was not just a good grip, it was the belief that you could fix your own problems with your own 2 hands, the way people did for centuries before the game got turned into a shopping list. You just got a piece of that belief back. If you are the kind of person who has always sensed that the durable, honest answers have been buried under things designed to keep you paying, then you and I are cut from the same cloth, and you are exactly who I make these videos for. Now I want to hear from you, and I mean this. When you try the soft thumb and the small squeeze at impact, that little ringing motion Musashi wrote about in the water scroll, I want to know what happened to your ball flight on the very first swing. Did the slice ease up? Did you feel your wrists unlock? Tell me in the comments below. Be specific, tell me what club you used and what you felt, because I read them, and other people learning this need to hear that it worked for a real person like you. Don't just watch and move on. Leave the comment. This community grows when you speak up. And if you want more of this, more of the old, buried, practical knowledge that the modern world quietly replaced with things that keep you spending, then come join us. Subscribe, and you'll be standing with a whole group of people who are done being sold dependents and are recovering the real methods, one at a time. Next time, I'm going to show you something the same old instructor taught me about the feet and the ground. A stance idea from the same sword tradition that fixes balance and adds distance without adding a single mile per hour of effort, and it undoes almost everything modern coaching told us about planting our weight. It surprised me even more than the grip did. You won't want to miss it. I spent 30 years strangling that club and paying for the privilege. It took a quiet man in a mountain town and a book written in a cave in 1645 to set my hands free. Now they're your hands. Go set them free too. Before you go, one thing. Everything I showed today was just the overview. Inside the Quiet Wisdom Circle, I continue right where we left off with the full Tanuchi grip drill. If something doesn't click, ask me directly and I answer you myself. You won't be alone either. Everyday folks just like you are already with me. Point your phone's camera at the code on screen. You can cancel anytime. Now that your grip feels right, let me show you the one idea that makes the whole swing finally click into place. It's simpler than you think, and it's starting right here.